Chilmark had a proportionally tremendously large deaf and dumb population.
When you were young, how many deaf people were around?
There was one-armed Ben Mayu and his brother Jared Mayu and Kay West and Ben West and George West Jr. and his wife, I think her name was Sobriny. They were both deaf and dumb. And there were one or two deaf and dumb over at Monempsha that I didn't know very well. I can't remember the name even. It seems to me it was West. And Josie West, did I mention him? His business was wood, firewood. Everybody burned wood in the summer, coal in the winter. And he had a big wood lot, and he cut wood. He'd bring it to you all sawed and split, or he'd bring it to you in cordwood lengths. His wife was Georgiana. She was not deaf.
And could he talk at all?
No, the only one who could talk that I remember was Katie West. And she was not born deaf and dumb. She could remember a few words that she learned as a small child. She was a very fine person.
What did local vineyarders think that the cause of the deafness was back then?
They were sure that it was intermarriage. Well, perhaps it was to a certain extent, but there has to be an origin where it came from. You want to talk to Nora Gross. She's working on that. There was a certain part of England where there were a lot of deaf and dumb, and apparently all the originators here in this country came from that area.
Now, did you know Josie West well?
I knew him very well. We were neighbors for a long time on what they called Rumpus Ridge. You know where the Chilmark School and the post office are? You're going towards Gay Head. That hill that goes up there was called Rumpus Ridge, because everybody was always fighting. And George West and George Willard West lived there, and Josie West, and George West Jr. and his wife Sobriny, if that was her name, lived there. It was all centered in that area, except for one-armed Ben Mayu and his brother Jared. They lived at the top of the hill. There's a great deal of deaf and dumbness in that family. Their parents and uncles and aunts were almost all deaf and dumb.
Ben Mayu,
He was a fisherman and a farmer.
and had lost one hand in a mowing machine accident when he was a child, when he was a small boy. He was just as good with a gun as anybody else. He'd rest the gun on his forearm, and he rowed a boat. He had a special harness made, and he'd put his stump in the harness, and he could row a boat as well as anybody else could. So they didn't let their handicap hurt them too much. Of course, there was no Social Security in those days anyway.
Do you think the deaf people had sort of special senses to make up for being deaf?
I suppose they did. I used to play for a good many of the dances. Some of them were there. They could sense the rhythm through the floor, and they danced to that rhythm.